Whenever you're ready, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى وسلم على سيدنا محمد سيدنا وسندنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. I would like to appreciate and honor those of you who are here and that are attending, especially on time. And I wanted to say a couple of words before starting the entire workshop. I'm assuming that majority of the people who are here right now are here for Saturday school and will possibly or possibly not attend the rest of the workshop. How many of you here go to public school? Raise your hand. All right, the few, the proud. As a fellow veteran trauma victim of public schools, I sympathize with you, and I give you the following advice and then the following glad tidings. That public school is not going to last forever. Don't go to school and look at yourself as one of whoever is over there, because you will inevitably have a great number of kids whose most honored and cherished goal in life is to put a ball through some sort of ring or some sort of net, which as far as I'm concerned is a stupid pet trick. It doesn't really help you with anything in your life. I'm not saying sports are haram, but if you play, that's good. It's not really going to do anything for you in terms of like a useful skill that helps you thrive or survive in life. And those people are above average. There are probably going to be a significant number of people you go to school with whose highest aspiration is to, I don't know, win like the next TikTok, like toilet liquor challenge viral video or something like that, or to film a fight between two kids that really shouldn't be happening. And this is all completely degenerate behavior. Why do I say that? Is it because I'm arrogant and I think I'm better than other people? No, I actually wish other people wouldn't do stuff like that because it's harmful for them and it's harmful for other people. The problem is the company you keep has a big effect on you. So don't look for the validation of such people. Don't try to imitate such people in their dress or in their speech or in their mannerisms or in their behavior. And if they don't see any value in what you're doing or if they don't like you, that's actually usually a good sign. You know, if toilet liquor has very little in common with you, that's usually a good sign. But what happens is that human beings affect other human beings, so we forget that from time to time. So I'm just letting you know that this is the case and this is how it's supposed to be. Do you mind just shutting that door? So with that out of the way, today's workshop, the idea behind it is that we live in interesting times. All of you are undoubtedly familiar with the genocide that's going on in Gaza and the political environment and the upending of a type of political order in America in which the Israeli lobby, which was unquestioned and supreme in this country, is starting to lose traction. In fact, it's lost traction significantly amongst the populace. It's gone from being one of the most loved and celebrated countries and causes in America to be something that the general populace views with disgust. And as the election cycles go further and further, the government and the establishment of this country will catch up with that reality. And so one of the bizarre and interesting developments is that because the actions of the genocide regime, both abroad and at home, are so disgusting to people, their attempts to do PR damage control to make it look like they're actually the good guys have fallen so flat on their face. They've shifted gear to a second strategy, which if we can't make ourselves look good, what we're going to do is we're going to make Muslims look bad. We're going to demonize Muslims. We're going to get the American public to hate Muslims. Why? Because when you want to kill people, you know, a human being, one of the things that's unique about a human being is that you see another person and you see yourself in the other person. This is like unique about humans. Most animals, even if they see themselves in a mirror, they don't know it's them. They think it's another animal. Some animals are able to figure out that this is a reflection, this is an image of me, but they have very little ability to sympathize with other animals, even the ones that are the most intelligent animals. This is something that's very uniquely human, is the ability to see another human being and see yourself in them. And murder is not a normal thing amongst human beings. Killing another person is something that is almost universally condemned between all civilized people. And so what happens is that if you want to have people kill on your behalf, the first step you have to take in that process is you have to start to make your enemy look like they're subhuman. You have to start breeding hatred inside of your heart. This is the same playbook that every peoples have that have committed genocide have undertaken from ancient times. So the famous Roman orator Cato, he was a famous orator and he was a famous writer. He was upset that Carthage, which was the first rival city of Rome, with which the Romans had 3 major wars known as the Punic Wars, the first, second, third Punic Wars. He was upset. He was a bigoted man, and he was upset that Carthage was not completely destroyed. And so because he was a famous orator and a famous writer, and I believe he was also a senator in the Roman Senate, every single speech of his would end with the line, "Carthage must be destroyed." What is it? It's like what you call like Chinese water torture. You're familiar with the idea that you strap someone down to like a table and you just have water drip on their forehead, one drop by one drop. No one drop is actually harming the person, but eventually what ends up happening is it becomes very painful and it can actually kill a person, but it's a very slow process. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes energy. And so desperate times call for desperate measures. People have certain agendas with regards to the Muslim world and with regards to the Muslims in America as well, for a number of reasons. We make poor consumers. We don't, drink the Kool-Aid of the media so easily. We don't follow economic agendas that allow people to make money off of us quickly. Hopefully we don't gamble. We don't drink. We don't do drugs. We don't, we don't value material things like other people do. We have some sort of spiritual life. We look inside for value in ourselves. And so the person who's selling all of those things will see a Muslim as an impediment to their material success. There's a number of groups of people that have some sort of intersectional problem with Muslims. And the Zionist lobby in America is one of them, and the Zionist lobby around the world is one of them. You see, this is something that has been reported by neutral third parties in the media from all across the world. Whenever there's any sort of genocide against Muslims anywhere, whether it's the Muslims in Bosnia by the Serbs or in the Croats, whether it's the Muslims in Myanmar or what's widely known as Burma, the Rohingya Muslims in Burma, whether it's a number of people from wherever they are, the RSF in Sudan, always you find some sort of military assistance and military training, military consulting from the Israeli government. Why? Because they have made in their minds, whether for better or worse, they've made the Muslims into their enemy, and they have this sort of understanding somehow or another that until and unless we destroy Muslims and we weaken Muslims around the world, there's always going to be some sort of threat against us. And so this is something we didn't ask for it, we didn't advocate for it. I don't really think actually there's a reason for it, but for whatever reason or another, this fear of the Muslims is there in the minds of those people, and we're going to deal with it one way or the other. So we've shifted gears from what? From what we're doing is, our enemies saying what we're doing is right, nobody agrees with them. They're even an embarrassment to their own allies, they're even an embarrassment to themselves. Even Jews in this country, by and large, especially under the age of 40, half of them or more actually are disgusted by the genocide that's going on, or at least think that it's not a good thing. So gears are being shifted to what? To demonizing Muslims. And so you see this fresh push out of the middle of nowhere. All of a sudden everybody realizes, oh, Muslims are so horrible. All of a sudden they realize, oh, Muslims are in America. Oh, did you know that there are Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan? Where did the first Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan come from? Henry Ford, which is like a long time ago. I know you guys are looking at me and thinking like I'm old, right? When I was sitting in your place and some old dude was talking to me, Henry Ford was still like 2-3 generations before him. So at the turn of the century, like the early 1900s, Henry Ford brought over Yemeni workers in order to work in the Ford factories. But why is it all of a sudden America realizes, oh my God, Dearborn is taken over by Sharia law like in 2025? This is not some sort of organic realization. This is not something that kind of spontaneously happened and like, oh look, America is waking up to like the Muslim population and the Muslim This is all completely contrived. It's completely something that's been funded and funneled by exploiting media and by exploiting social media in particular. TikTok got bought, was forced to be sold, to be more precise, it was forced to be sold by Congress to Larry Ellison and to just a group of basically Zionist cutouts. Likewise, CBS. CBS was you guys know what CBS is, right? You're not that pious, are you? You all know what CBS is. One of the whatever major national TV networks. When I was your age, CBS got bought by Westinghouse. And I remember it was the butt of jokes. Why? Because Westinghouse is an appliance company. So people would say, like, what is a company that made its fortune making like washers and dryers and like dishwashers and stuff like that? Why are they buying a media corporation? Now the same Zionist group that bought out Westinghouse has bought out CBS and completely gutted their entire news network and restaffed it with people who are hardcore Zionists, people who are veterans of the Israeli Defense Forces, et cetera, et cetera. What is the agenda behind all of that? And what's the link between that and between all this anti-Muslim sentiment? Twitter, an interesting place. If you're not on it, good for you. Bought out by Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who claims he's not a Jew, and so by rabbinic law, maybe he's not, but his father is a South African Jewish emerald mine owner who made his fortune in apartheid in South Africa and is constantly pushing a pro-Israeli and an anti-Muslim agenda. Leveraging the fact that he's an owner so that even if I don't follow him on Twitter, I somehow or another have to read his tweets. Which is all the same thing. It's just fanning the flames of making people afraid of Muslims in this country. And what is the point of it? Why are they doing it? There is a goal. This is a step. It's not like the end. This is a step in a particular trajectory. What is the trajectory? This trajectory is the same thing. The end goal is the same thing that's happening to Muslims in Gaza. It's the same thing that's happening to Muslims in the West Bank. It's the same thing that's happening to Muslims in Sudan. It's the same thing that's happening to Muslims in Burma. It's the same thing that's happening to Muslims in all of these different places. Which is what? It's genocide. You're like, well, how are they going to start killing us now? But it's a process. This is a stage. This is a step along the stage. To fight when the violence comes to your threshold, it's not something that's very easy to do. It's not something that's possible for most people. Your entire lives have not been, have not followed the trajectory of like military preparedness. At most, maybe someone does like BJJ. Who here does BJJ or martial arts, right? Taekwondo doesn't count. Yeah. Taekwondo is good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not going to talk crap about it, but it probably won't help you much in a fight. At least the amount you've taken. And that's not even how wars are fought nowadays. Right now, the war has still some way away from what? From violence. And one of the things that I want to say in addition to that is that many of our parents, not all of us, many of our parents, many of our grandparents are immigrants to this country. Immigrants always have this instinct that I have to duck and keep my head down, otherwise I'm going to get smacked, which is a reasonable instinct. You see that anybody who's not a citizen in this country, they're all liable to get deported. Even some citizens have their citizenship revoked. They'll go and pour through all of your papers to see if there's any one even innocent mistake in it so that they can say that you lied on your application and your citizenship is revoked and you're going to get sent back. But those of us who are citizens, and more importantly, those of us who are born citizens, that there's no real legal mechanism for them to revoke our citizenship and send us back to really anywhere. For those of us who are in that position that have really nowhere to go, quote unquote, back to. I myself, people ask me this question. Someone literally after Salatul Jumu'ah asked me this question, which is what? Sheikh, the way things are going in this country, people say that, we should go back and move to the Muslim world, and if we're not here for da'wah, we shouldn't be here, blah, 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 But like, where should I go to? Like, what should I do? I go, I don't know. The answer is different for every person. If there's a place in the Muslim world, you have a job ready for you, you speak the language, you get along nicely, the government is good. If you want to go ahead and go. That may be the path of least resistance. But many of us don't have any of those things going on. Many of us have nowhere to go. And to be honest with you, the instinct when somebody brings you a challenge, it shouldn't be to run away. That's the exception, not the rule. Okay, fine, if someone's bringing some sort of overwhelming force, there's no point in staying and dying for no reason. But nobody's threatening us with death yet. It's still quite a ways over the horizon. And one of the interesting things that I guess has happened in America is that Americans didn't used to know about Islam. I was born in 1981, so I basically remember communicating with people in the general public and things that were on the media or whatever since about maybe like 1985 or so. Like my first memories as a child. And people didn't know what Islam was. They didn't know the difference between Islam and Hinduism. They didn't know what a Muslim was. They didn't know what an Arab was. They didn't know what a Persian was. They heard some of these words, maybe they maximum heard them before. They had no idea about any of these things, what any of these things mean. And now time has gone on that people are being exposed more and more to Islam and to Muslims. Part of it through the Gulf Wars, part of it through 9/11, part of it through the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq. You have military veterans. The first Gulf War, I remember the postman who used to deliver mail to my house in Blaine, Washington, which is population 3,000 in those days. Now it's up to 4,000. He's an African-American gentleman. I would see this guy for years. Then one day I saw him at community college. I was taking classes, and he was taking classes as well. It's very nonchalantly, he's like, "Yo, man, you Muslim?" I said, "Yeah." He was, "Cool, so am I." I'm like, "How come I never saw you at the masjid? How come I never, what's I don't understand." And he told me this story. He said that, "No, I'm not, so tight with my practice, but I'm a Muslim for sure." I go, "How'd you become a Muslim?" He was a veteran of the first Iraq War. Imagine that. America sent an army. It was a horrific war. It was a very devastating war. Both Iraq wars were crimes. The first one is a war crime. The second one is like a Holocaust. They went to fight against Muslims, to kill Muslims over there. He said that I was stationed in Saudi Arabia. He said that there were some Saudi military officers that were stationed with me, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" And he said, "I'm not doing anything." He said, "We're going to take you somewhere very special, very important, but it's a secret. You can't tell anyone." He's like, "What?" And they're like, "It's so secret, we have to blindfold you, so you can't know where we're going." So they literally, he told me, he said that they blindfolded me. They put me in the trunk of the car and said, "Stay quiet." He's like, "I'm wondering when I'm like in the trunk, wondering what is going on." And so they drove him from the base from somewhere near Riyadh to where? To Makkah Mukarramah. And in blindfold, they took him to the terrace of one of the terraces that overlooks the Kaaba, and they removed his blindfold there. He said, I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the Kaaba. He said, such a sudden, overwhelming feeling enveloped me. He said, I had no idea what it was, but I just knew this is it. And so he took his shahada right there. He said that I'm a Muslim, that's all I know. This happened, these types of things happened so much in the Second Gulf War. They actually made a rule that soldiers, American soldiers, because they can't stop them from accepting Islam. That's unconstitutional. They made a rule that the soldiers have to pray their salat on the base. They can't go to the masjid. And they made another rule that they can't marry local women. Who goes to a country to kill everybody and say, I'm gonna get married over here? It's not a normal thing. But the fear of Islam, still even in the most dysfunctional interaction, the fear of Islam is so much that it's going to overwhelm people that they had to do stuff like this. And so the point of this entire long introduction is that this is also an opportunity, and this is an opportunity in which it looks bad, but the deck is very much stacked in our favor. Because who here has, their idea of Islam, includes killing children? No, anyone? Nobody, right? Being a baby killer is generally not a good thing. In fact, I'll go ahead and go out on a limb here and say it's never a good thing. Now, some rules have an exception, like if you're starving to death, you can eat pork, although generally pork is haram. You never kill baby. You never kill children. Never. There is no khair in killing children at all. The only exception maybe I can think of, if you have a scenario where one has to die in order to save like 30 or something like that, even that, it's a tragedy. Nobody's like happy about a situation like that. And so the point is that we are on the side of the haqq. Allah Ta'ala is on our side. Why? Because no matter what our shortcomings are, no matter how weak our faith is, no matter whether we sleep through Fajr or not, no matter any of those things, still at the end of the day, we're not pushing an agenda that's a shameful agenda. Islam teaches people to what? Like, be clean, don't eat dirty things, don't take intoxicants, drugs, alcohol, things like that destroy you. Don't rob and steal from one another. The rich shouldn't exploit the poor. You should be kind to your elders. You should be kind to children. You should try to get along with people. You should forgive one another. There's nothing about this deen that's something shameful. And in that sense, the attempt to dehumanize us and vilify us gives us a chance, because people didn't know who we were and they didn't care before. Now that they're whipped up into all this fear over who Muslims are, and they're fed all of these lies, all of this propaganda about Muslims. Now you have an opportunity, because our people are relatively fair-minded people compared to other people in the world, that Americans, generally speaking, when you talk crap about somebody and that person says, hey, you didn't hear my side of the story, why don't you hear my side of the story? Generally, at a higher rate than people in other parts of the world, Americans will say, okay, go ahead and say what it is you need to say. Whereas they wouldn't have given a damn about who you are, what you have to say from before, because it wasn't something relevant to them. For that reason, this is an opportunity. We have to speak on our own behalf. We have to speak up in order to represent ourselves. If we don't speak up to represent ourselves, somebody else will speak up and represent you. This is the rule number one. If we don't speak up to represent ourselves, what will happen? What will happen? Go say it. Someone else will speak up and represent you. So if someone says, you eat dog for breakfast, and you stay quiet, you're like, Allah knows I don't eat a dog for breakfast, but everybody says it in public. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're not going to be punished for something you didn't do, right? But in this world, you have to deal with the repercussions of that. If someone says, your father and mother were brother and sister, do you know that? Is it true? No. If it's not true, you say, well, I don't have to say anything, it's not true. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're right. If it's not true, no one's going to get any sin for it. Maybe you'll get some reward for having to have had patience with people's stupidity. In this world, though, by staying quiet about things like that, it's that Chinese water torture, even if people don't think it's true. When you say it again and again and again and again, what ends up happening is people start to wonder, is it true or not? This is like classic. This is 100%. You guys are all public school kids. I'm not like the most politically correct speaker and things like that. That's one of the reasons people like me. It's also another reason that people don't like me. But we'll go ahead and say, because you guys all went to public school, you all go to public school, and the masjid starts on that side of the building, right? Imagine in school someone's like, oh, so-and-so's gay. I guess nowadays they give you a reward for that. When I was a kid, you'd get beat up for it. Is it true? Is it not true? Doesn't matter. Once people say, the first person says it, second person says it, third person said it, fourth person said it, fifth person said it, what do people start to think about you or wonder about you? So you have to stand up and say your side of the story. You still have the ability to do so. There are places in the world where Muslims don't have the ability to say their side of the story. Here you still have the ability to say your side of the story. And so what happens is that this attack against Islam, this attack against Muslims, the people who are fabricating lies against Islam, fabricating lies against Muslims, they've been doing it for a very long time. It's not something new at all. In fact, things like this started from the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His enemies used to fabricate things against him because they couldn't actually argue any point with him coherently. And so they're already at it and they're already good at it. There's some training that's involved. The idea with this gathering is that we should then look at those things that are fabrications against Islam, that are fabrications against Muslims, that even some Muslims started to believe because of their lack of education with regards to their own deen, in order to be able to respond to a person when they say something about Islam in order to say what is true, what is not true, what we believe, what we don't believe. Inevitably, there are going to be certain things that we believe that other people are not going to like. But it's always better for them to not like us for things that are true than for them to not like us for things that are untrue. And if they dislike us for things that are true, this deen is, it's the haqq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it from above the seven heavens and above the arsh azim. If a person doesn't understand why it's true in the moment, you have to still say it to them, because life will go on. Eventually they'll see. There's a good chance, there's a good possibility that their eyes will be open. They'll see and they'll understand, okay, this thing that Muslims say actually makes a lot more sense. And so that's the prelude, without taking up too much more time, about why we're here and why we're here to discuss what we're here to discuss. And so the first topic that's on the docket for how to represent Islam and how to combat criticism and combat critiques of Islam that are ignorant critiques, has to do with what? Is Islam something that can coexist with science and with a modern understanding of the universe? So I didn't write the title, so I'm just going to look at the title again. It says what? Science and Islam. Can Islam coexist with modern consensus scientific opinion? And so in order to address this topic, we have to do a couple of things, which is, first of all, we have to define what science is. And so people who are not scientists, oftentimes for them the word science just means like magic, but like an acceptable type of magic, whereas magic is like from 1,000 years ago and fake, but science is like real magic. For some people, science means religion, but it doesn't mean really any of those things. What does science mean? Science means empirical philosophy. What does empirical mean? Any knowledge that you gain from your senses, from seeing, from hearing, from tasting, from smelling, from touching. You touch something and you make an empirical observation. You make an observation that ice is cold by touching it. Fire is hot when you touch it. Metal has a particular feel. Plastic has a particular feel. A fire, when it burns from a certain fuel at a certain temperature, has a particular color. How many planets are there orbiting the solar system? I mean, it depends on how you define a planet, but then you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is basically science is empirical philosophy. So the idea is a person has a hypothesis, meaning they have an idea about things. What is a hypothesis, for example? That if you heat water enough, that it will transition from the liquid phase to a gas phase. It will change from like a liquid to a gas. And so how do you test that hypothesis if it's true or not? You take water and you put heat on it, and you increase the heat, and you know, okay, at this temperature it's liquid, at this temperature it's liquid, at this temperature it's liquid. All of a sudden, when you get to whatever 180 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever 100 degrees Celsius, all of a sudden you see that it starts to boil and it starts to transition, and if you boil it for long enough, it'll disappear. And then someone will say, well, maybe it was just the time and place, it was just a fluke, whatever. Okay, so you have another container of water that's at room temperature the whole time, and you see, does that one boil or not? You see, is there a difference between how much water is left in the cup? This is what science is. You have a hypothesis, and then you make a controlled experiment. And then you measure what the outcome of that controlled experiment is. That's all it is. There's literally nothing wrong with this in Islam. In fact, one of the problems that quote-unquote Muslims have with science is because they hung out with Christians and Jews too much, and they don't understand their own religion, and they take cues about Islam from what? From things that Christians and Jews say. So in Christianity and Judaism, there's this idea somehow or another that too much reasoning is bad, too much knowledge is bad, too much understanding is bad. It somehow will mess up your relationship with God. Are there any who follow the Quran here? Is there anybody who's memorized 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 juz of Quran? you should do so. It's good. It's good for you. Is there anyone who's read all or at least some significant part of the translation of the Quran? This is a challenge for you, inshallah. Read through the Quran and tell me, is there any place in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something negative about people because they reason too much, they use too much reasoning? There's nowhere in the Quran that says that. In fact, Allah Ta'ala blames people and censures people and finds fault with people for not reasoning, for not thinking, for lack of a nicer way of saying it, for being stupid about things. Thinking and reason are a guide that lead you to what? To faith. They're a guide that lead you to Allah Ta'ala. They're what make you understand what Allah and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam are saying and why it's superior to other claims. So the Quran is replete with praise for reason. Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun. We sent it down as an Arabic Quran in order that you may be people that reason. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says what? He says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Do they not ponder over this Quran and know that if it came from other than Allah Ta'ala, they would have found that the pieces don't fit together. They would have found that there's dissonance in it. Some parts mean one thing, another part means another thing. The two of them can't mean the same thing at the same time. This is, on the other hand, look at the Torah, that the what's left of the Torah that the Jews carry. According to it, their human race is like 5,000 some odd years old. This is not a tenable claim. We have archaeology that's much older than that. We have material evidence of archaeology that's much older than that. The Christians come with something even more fantastic and more fabulous and unbelievable than that. They say, we worship one God, but it's really three. But it's one. So when they try to give you the good news of the gospel, what will they tell you? They say, we worship a triune God. What does triune mean? Tri means three, one. But is it three or is it one? Because if it's three, it cannot be one. If it's one, it cannot be three. If any Christian ever tries to aggressively tell you about how wonderful their religion is, all you have to do is ask them one question, and then just sit back and laugh. Can you explain to me the Trinity? How is it possible that three gods can be one? Today we sit and watch them fumble through. Every single one of them will trip up and fumble through and say something that is incoherent, makes no sense whatsoever. Every one of them will be incoherent in a different way. It's funny nowadays. In the old days, it was actually quite serious, because the ancient church, they used to have wars with one another over creedal formulations. They used to say that this person is not a Christian, they're from the devil, and we have to kill all of them. They had genocidal wars. There are types of Christianity that, because they didn't have the might of the Roman army behind them, they didn't survive in any of the parts of the Christian world. The only reason we know anything about them is why? Because the Muslims conquered those areas. And so those people, those Christians, the Muslims protected them from the other Christians. So coming back to the discussion about science, okay? This idea, first of all, science is not magic. Science is something very simple. Who can explain to me? Who can regurgitate what I said? What is science? It's a process. What's the first thing you do in that process? Raise your hand. Go ahead. Show how smart you are. Go ahead.
You said empirical philosophy?
Yeah, so in that empirical philosophical system, what's the first, in order to learn more knowledge about science, what's the first thing you do?
The process of hypotheses?
You make a hypothesis. You have this idea that I think if this happens, then this is going to be the consequence of that. Okay? Then after that, what do?
Retest it.
Go ahead. Yeah, you design an experiment with a control to see, is this true or is this not true? And then what's the next process? What's the next step in the process? Go ahead, raise your hand.
Analyze the data.
Well, first you observe the data. You observe. You just write down. There's no analysis. You just look, okay, at this temperature, is it still liquid? At this temperature, is it still liquid? Right? And then afterward, what you said, you analyze the data. Then you look at the data and you see what does it tell us. The nice thing about science is what? Is that you, in that process, you document everything. Nobody has to take your word for it. Nobody has to believe you just because you're a nice guy or whatever. If I told you yesterday, I saw a car accident in which 10 cars got smashed into each other. If you believe me, you believe me. You don't believe me, you don't believe me. You just have to take my word for it. But what if you saw it then like a video of it on the news? Then you can say, okay, maybe this thing happened. And one of the problems with that now is that, there's so much AI deepfake nonsense out there. But the idea is if someone were to show you some sort of material evidence, if we were to drive down and I showed you 10 smashed cars on that, stretch of highway, then you say, you don't have to believe me anymore. Now you have some sort of evidence for what you're trying to say. And so science in that sense has nothing to do with whether Islam is true or not. In fact, the mutakallimun, the scholars of Aqidah, of Islamic creed, they very clearly said something, which is that whatever is in the Quran and whatever is in the Hadith, if the wording of the Quran and if the wording of the Hadith seems to conflict with some sort of established observable reality that everybody can observe, that means that your understanding of that ayah or your understanding of that hadith is incorrect. There are expressions in the Quran that are replete with all sorts of things that if someone were to say for example, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, he says, he said that وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ اللَّيْلُ نَسْلَخُ مِنْهُ النَّهَارَ فَإِذَا هُمْ مُظْلِمُونَ وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. That, for example, like that the sun, it kind of runs in a particular motion, in a particular movement. And a modern person were to say to you, well, the sun doesn't actually move. The earth moves around the sun, the sun doesn't move around the earth. What would we say? We would say that that's fine. We know it's an established fact that the sun doesn't orbit around the earth orbits around the sun. But from an observer perspective, it looks like the sun is going around the earth, and all of these things are relative anyway. One of the reasons that we say that the earth goes around the sun is because it makes the mathematics a lot less complicated. Otherwise, there are mathematical models in which you can describe the motion of the sun and the moon and all the stars as the earth being the center of the universe. It just makes things really complicated. It's like mathematically much simpler to describe a solar system in which the sun is the heliocentric model, the sun is the center of the universe. Now, compare this is a very simple thing that Muslims, I don't know anybody who really debated it seriously in the history of Islam. They accepted it. Why? Because they had this understanding that the deen is not there to tell you that your eyes are lying to you and your ears are lying to you and your brain is lying to you. The deen tells you your eyes actually show you useful things. Your ears actually give you useful information around the world, and your mind gives you very useful information about both this world and the hereafter, both your dunya and your deen, your material prosperity and your spiritual prosperity. That inherently, if the two of them are irreconcilable, somehow or another you misunderstood something, somehow or another you're doing something wrong. Compare this and contrast this with the understanding of the Christians. There's an individual by the name of Galileo. He was a very famous astronomer who proposed a model for the way the solar system worked. Although he wasn't the first one who forwarded the heliocentric theory, the idea that the sun is the center of the universe. But he proposed a heliocentric model, and he also said that the sun is also not the center of the universe either. The church said, well, because Jesus Christ is God, they said because Jesus Christ is God, this earth has to be the center of the universe. When Copernicus showed very clearly that the sun is the center of the solar system, they're like, okay, well, this solar system we're in is the center of the universe. Galileo showed that it's not, even this solar system is not the center of the universe either. What did the Pope do? The Pope wrote a fatwa saying that Galileo is not a Christian, even though he believes in Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. All the Christian stuff he does. Just this one thing he made this observation, he's out. He's going to hell forever. I remember in the 90s when I was in middle school, there was a news I heard on the radio that the Pope finally said, okay, well, we take him out of Jahannam. He's really a Christian again. which is in some ways even more like ridiculous than the initial thing, which was pretty ridiculous. We don't have these problems, we don't have these hang-ups, we don't have these issues. Why is it that the lie that Muslims are backwards and barbaric and are anti-science and anti-technology, why is it that this lie spreads amongst people? For a couple of reasons. Why? Because everybody likes to think that they're superior to other people, that everyone else is an idiot and I'm the only smart person in the world. This is a very dangerous trait to have inside. This is literally the model of Iblis himself, that Allah Ta'ala created our father Sayyidina Adam and told the angels to, and Iblis with them, to prostrate, to show respect to our father Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And he says, no, like I'm like such a big shot, why should I, this guy's new, like why should I show him respect? But the thing is, this is a real thing inside of it's a real thing inside of your mind, it's a real thing inside your heart. You'll find it, like anyone here have siblings, right? So your siblings, either you do it to them or they do it to you, or you do it to each other. It's a very natural thing. Someone compliments your sister, someone compliments your brother. Oh my gosh, you're so smart, you're so strong, you're so talented, you're so this, you're so that. First feeling inside, this guy's a complete moron. What do you mean? She's so stupid. What do you mean? I'm smarter than her. I'm prettier than her. I'm smarter than him. He's an idiot. You don't even know, like last week he did this like really stupid thing. Don't be like that. Don't be a hater. The first lesson in Islam is what? Don't be a hater. Why? Iblis was the first hater. All he had to do is like, oh cool, like, mashallah, Allah gave me so much, alhamdulillah, Allah gave you something good too. We respect that. That's all. All you had to do. When you love another person for a gift that Allah gave them, you know what the reward for that is? Allah Ta'ala gives you that as well. Either you'll see it in this world or you'll see it in the hereafter, but Allah Ta'ala will give it to you when you're happy for somebody, especially when you're happy for a good person, like, you're happy for your brothers and sisters, your family members, a fellow Muslim, your neighbor, for anyone, like really anyone, you're happy for them. Even if you see a non-Muslim with some blessing, say, Ya Allah, just like you gave them this blessing in this world, give them the blessing of Iman in the hereafter as well. Ameen. We only withhold those du'as from people when you see someone using their blessings for harm. Like if someone's killing children with what Allah gave them, then you're like, Allah, stop this person, because it seems like the more that you give them, the more they're going to do harm in this world and in the hereafter. But in general, we're not haters. We're not haters for people, And even if the worst genocidal baby killer, worst person tomorrow were to cry and say, "I was so wrong. I'm sorry. I want to change my life," we would be happy about that. Now, some people lied so much that it's difficult for this. Like the boy cried wolf so many times. It's going to be hard to believe. But if it were true, and we knew it were true, we would still be the first people to be happy for such a person. Anyhow, coming back to this thing is that people have this idea, first of all, that I'm smart and everybody else is an idiot. The second thing is that they come from a predominantly Christian and Jewish tradition in which their religion was something that held them back from science. It held them back from believing their eyes. It held them back from believing their ears. This is what the entire thing, what they call the Renaissance and the Reformation and the Enlightenment. These are they describe three separate things that happened, but they happened around the same time in Europe. Which is what people started forgiving themselves for putting aside, not that they didn't care, but from putting aside what the church has to say about certain things and just looking ourselves, is this thing true or not? Whether it has to do with scientific inquiry, whether it has to do with theological inquiry as well, that there were certain practices the church had that were corrupt. The Catholic Church used to do weird things, like they used to sell indulgences, meaning that if you pay the church enough money, they'll give you a get-out-of-jail-free card for different sins. You can commit adultery, you can kill somebody, you can this, you can do that. Just put the money in the box and move along. Keep it moving. All of a sudden, there's all these Christians that are like, this is not in the Bible anywhere. Where did you guys get this from? In fact, we're going to leave the Catholic Church. And people left, thousands of them, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of them were leaving the church. Then the church is like, they kind of walked it back a little bit. They're like, like the indulgences, we don't do that now. Completely, we don't do that now. And it's not to harp on the Catholics. Every fraudulent religion does things like this. And fraudulent religion, there are Muslims who have fraudulent religion as well. Muslims do this type of stuff as well. We say Muslim, we don't say that this is a part of Islam, but we say that what? That these people culturally, they'll say Assalamu alaikum, they celebrate Eid instead of celebrating Christmas. They probably won't serve you a ham sandwich if you go to their house. Culturally, they have like very Islamic-y, cultural trappings. But there are people, you'll meet them, they'll be like, yeah, give me $10,000 and I'll have 10 years of missed prayers forgiven for you. You can't do that though. This is one of the reasons why every religion in the world, the knowledge of that religion is held by certain elites, by a priestly caste. The Jews used to be that way. This is one of the innovations of Rabbinic Judaism. But the Jews before, like the Israelite religion, used to be that way. There was a priestly caste and everybody else worked the fields and, fight wars and things like that. The Hindus are like that. They have a Pandit, they have a Brahmin caste. They're the only ones who learn Sanskrit. They're the only ones who learn their holy scriptures, and they're the ones who are priests and administer their religion. Everybody else go fight wars, go make money, go run businesses, work your fields, etc. The Catholics used to be that way. Christians used to be that way. In the Catholic Church, it was not allowed for people to read the Bible. And for very good reason. They realized if people start reading the Bible, they're going to realize that the things that we're doing are not very Christian. And more than that, even if they read the Bible and do the things that are Christian, they're going to realize none of it makes sense and they're going to leave Christianity. What happened was when the Reformation happened, when they got caught with all of this, with all of these things are tied with one another, right? Science telling people that, things like the sun is not the center of the solar system. This triggers a cascade of things that people now have to question. Everything. So when people left the church and the Catholics say, oh, these people are all heretics, they're following the devil, they're all going to hell. And those people said, look, here's the translation of the Bible in German. Here's the translation of the Bible in Dutch. Here's the translation of the Bible in Spanish. Here's the translation of the Bible in English. They can't deny it at that point. Cat's out of the bag. And so what happens is that they also then have to change their tune. But the problem is that the Protestants, that left the Catholic Church, when they translated the Bible, they wanted to prove to people that the Catholic Church was lying. But what ended up happening, an unintended consequence, was everybody, once they read the Bible, they realized that we can't follow. Real people realize we can't follow this anymore. That's why if you're in school, right? Are the majority of the kids in school Christian? Do they even identify as Christian anymore? When I was in school, they did. I don't know. Maybe they still do, maybe they don't. But one thing I will tell you that I remember from even when I was in school, even when people were like, yeah, Christianity is the best, and Jesus, you're going to go to hell, and and you ask them anything to compare the way you practice Islam with the way they practice Christianity, there's no contest. When's the last time you went to church? Christmas. Dude, Christmas was like almost a year ago at this point. Did you learn how to read the Bible in its original language? Yeah, it's in English. It's not really actually in English, right? Shut up. Okay, someone who's like the cream of the crop, the best of them. There's none of them that pray 5 times a day. There's none of them that learn Hebrew in order to read the Torah and the Old Testament, even though they claim that that's part of their scripture. There's none of them that learn Greek in order to read the New Testament, even though that's their scripture. So much so that what's the name of the God we worship? Anyone raise your hand? Go ahead. Anyone? It's like written like all over the walls and everything. Anyone know the name of the God we worship? Allah. Who do you worship? To say we worship Jesus. That's not even his name. Do you know his name? So we say Isa alayhi salam, in Arabic it's Isa, right? They don't know his name in Greek, they don't know his name in Hebrew, they don't know his name in Aramaic. They don't even know the name of the God that they worship. When you point these things out, it's quite embarrassing. It's quite embarrassing. Anyway, so all the cat was out of the bag, so people, not by and large now, they've abandoned Christianity as a way of life. Flip this to Islam. The two modern biggest sticking points that Christians and Jews have for reconciling religion with science. The first one is the idea of the Big Bang, that the universe has a finite beginning. That was something like 14 point something billion years ago, close to 15 billion years ago, not exactly. And this is very difficult to reconcile with the idea that the world is 5,000 years old. People had a problem with that. Islam, we never claimed that the world is 5,000 years old. Rather, we said that the universe has a finite beginning. That the samawat kanat ratqan fafataqnahuma. Allah Ta'ala describes the heavens as having been locked up and we opened it. Which sounds like what? It sounds like the Big Bang. Like all the matter of everything is in one place and then boom, it just explodes and it expands into the known universe. It's not a problem that we have. What's the second big sticking point that the Christians and Jews have with regards to the observable world around us is the theory of evolution. Who here? You guys look like you're high schoolers. Who here has taken biology or is taking biology? Here, there's a very useful distinction that needs to be made when discussing the theory of evolution. Because people are like, oh shit, do we believe in the theory of evolution or not? I'm like, it's science, it's not a aqidah, you know? If some data seems to indicate something is true, then we acknowledge that that data seems to indicate that something is true. If tomorrow we find out something else that makes more sense, then there's no religious or dogmatic commitment to one thing or the other. But have you, okay, let's ask that question again. Who took biology in the past? They're not taking it right now, but they took it, right? Who here's taking it right now? Have you guys ladies gotten to genetics yet? Like the Punnett square and dominant recessive genes and how they're passed on, whatever. Anyhow, we'll try to simplify it for the crowd, and it will be a review for those who have already taken this material in the past. Plus, mashallah, the other good news is since probably 85% of you, your parents won't talk to you again if you don't become a doctor. This will be useful. Also in other things, right? So, every human being has something called DNA, which is a kind of like a record of how all the parts that you're made up of have to be made up. And then they have machinery inside of their cells called RNA, which basically take the instruction from the DNA and then assemble amino acids, which are the building blocks of life, assemble them in different configurations in order to make the proteins that make up your hair, your skin, your nails, your blood, every like component of your cells, your brain, all your organs, all your tissues, etc. So imagine a very simple life form. A human being is a relatively complex life form. Imagine a very simple life form like a bacteria. A bacteria may have, and so the kind of the sequence of code that makes up one gene, or that makes up one protein, maps to one what we call a gene. And so, obviously, DNA is much more than just exons coding genes. There are introns that are genes that are not coded ever, that people theorize may be proteins that organism doesn't use anymore or whatever. And then there are other things that are going on in DNA, but just the exons, the part that code for proteins. The way that a human being is that you receive roughly half of your genetic material from your mother and roughly half your genetic material from your father. Your mitochondria are completely inherited from your mother. And if you're a male, there's a little bit of excess genetic material on your X chromosome that you only get from your mother. But for the vast majority of genes, you have one copy of it from your mother and you have one copy of it from your father, I should say. And so this is why, for example, if somebody with dark skin marries somebody with light skin, and the person with dark skin has only the genes of dark skin, and someone with light skin only has the genes of someone with light skin, what happens is that the children, all of them, will be somewhere in the middle. And, for example, if your hair, you have like genes for black hair color from one side, and genes for like platinum blonde, like one of your parents from Iceland, like literally it's almost as white as like an 80-year-old person's hair would be. what color will the hair end up being? It'll end up being black. It may be not as dark as your black-haired parent, but it's going to end up being black. Why? Because the proteins that make the color in the hair, you have 2 copies of them. One copy has no color, the other copy has color. Obviously, if you mix white and black, how is it going to end up looking? It'll look black, because you can't see the white. It doesn't present itself. But the point is that you're half from one side, half from the other side. Then if you then do a second generation, this is called a Punnett square. This is actually one of the reasons I now am regretting not asking for a blackboard, because there may be, because they're like, do you have a PowerPoint presentation? As a small aside and tangent, I hate PowerPoint presentations. I think they are a conspiracy, crab people conspiracy to bore everybody to death. And instead of taking notes, people should listen. One of the nice things is that there's a recording. You can go back and take notes afterward, but oftentimes you don't need to take notes if you just listen to what somebody's saying. At any rate, so now you have like a black hair, white hair. They have children. All the children have one white hair gene, one black hair gene. Now you take 2 individuals, one with one black hair gene and one with one white hair gene, and the second one that has one black hair gene and one white hair gene. Out of every 4 children that they have, one of them is going to have only the genes of black hair, one of them is only going to have the genes of white hair, and 2 of them in the middle are going to have, one white hair, one black hair, one black hair, one white hair. It's completely just random statistics. These are like the four possibilities. This is how this works. This gets more and more complicated because certain traits in an organism are contingent on more than one gene, and certain traits in an organism are contingent on more than one gene, and it gets complicated because the further you go into like the next generation, the more combinations and permutations of these different genotypes are possible. Genotypes are like what genetic material you have from your mother and from your father. And so what does the theory of evolution state? It states 2 things. One is that genes are assorted randomly. So question. Think about this question. If you have one copy of genes from your father and one copy of genes from I'm asking you, big guy, gray sweatshirt, I'm asking you. One copy of each gene from your father, the other copy from who? Your mother, right? When you have a kid, which of those 2 copies are you going to pass on to the next generation? It's completely random. Other than those exceptions I gave in the mitochondria and the little bit of overhang in the X chromosome, which you pass on completely from your mother, but that's like a very small portion of your genome. The overwhelming majority of it, it's completely random. Which that's why, because if it was only from your father, only from your mother, what would end up happening? All brothers and sisters would be identical, genetically identical. But it's not the case, right? Brothers and sisters vary differently. All of them resemble their parents somehow or another. But which side they pass on is completely random. So the theory of evolution has to do with 2 things. One is the random assortment of genes, and second is the idea of the survival of the fittest. The idea is that what? If, for example, a man and a woman have children, and one of the 2 parents, and the mother, for example, has some debilitating disease. If she has genetic disease, if she has 2 diseased copies of the genes, then all their kids are going to be diseased. If she has 1 diseased copy of the gene, then half of the kids are going to be diseased. The idea is what? Is that diseased genes don't survive. Why? Because if you're weak, then the chances that you're going to go on to the next generation and survive long enough in order to pass your genes on to somebody else decreases. This is all the theory of evolution has to say in its basis. Which is what? The random assortment of genes. And the second is what? Survival of the fittest. Islam has absolutely no objection to this much. What ended up happening is, in fact, scientists, in particular people involved in zoology, biology, started to observe certain similarities between different species of animals, and they started to theorize. They said, well, maybe these two similar species that are different, at one time they were actually the same species, and like one bird went to like, migrated, flew across, like the ocean was smaller at that time, flew across to North America, the other one stayed in Europe, or vice versa, God knows, right? And so now what happens is that there are two different environments, one place is colder than the other, so the offspring that has the genetic adaptations to survive the cold, that's, that made the species go in a particular trajectory or direction in that place, and the one that has the adaptations to survive the heat, that's what made them survive in that direction. People started to notice these things. Like one of the coolest observations like this that, like in my personal opinion, is what? Why is it that they say that a whale is not a fish? Even though all fish live in water, whales live in water. All fish are really good at swimming, whales are good at swimming. Yeah? Go ahead.
Because whales are mammals, they breathe air.
No, it's not because whales are mammals. Tell me, why do you say whales are mammals?
Because they go out every hour to breathe water.
So first, they breathe air. They cannot breathe in the water. They don't have gills to breathe in the water like fish do. What's another thing? Come on, there's a whole list of things.
They give birth.
They give live birth. Okay, some sharks and some fish do give live birth, but no mammals give birth to, like, with eggs. Well, that's not true either. Monotremes do, but like 99% of mammals don't give birth through eggs either. Okay, so what's another reason that you could say that you would make you believe that a whale is a mammal? The whale has a 4-chambered heart. Fish have 2-chambered hearts. Right? What's another? If you decode the genome of a whale, if you like do the DNA sequencing of a whale, it's very clear. The way everything functions inside of a whale is like a mammal. It's not like any of the other fish. And so what happens? Biologists are like, this is really interesting. How did this happen? And so they look at the evidence of older and older and older whales, and they seem to find skeletons which are partial. They're not complete skeletons, but the idea, at least the theory, is that they keep finding these older and older archaic forms of whales. Some of the older ones actually have like vestigial legs on them that are really small, but they're still there. They see like the ears, everything inside of it shows that this thing was somehow a mammal or another at some point. And all of the data converges on what? As a Pakistani, I'm very proud of this, that there was some land mammal, terrestrial land mammal somewhere in like by Karachi. Where's the Karachi wala, mashallah, by Clifton ke paas, And he just decided, instead of fighting with my brothers and sisters over whatever food that they're eating on land, I'm just gonna go into the water and like eat a fish instead. And it would hang out at the water, and then its kids would hang out in the water, and like further and further, what happens is because all their food was from the water, the genes that help the animal do even better in the water were the ones that seemed to survive better. And somehow or another, this animal went from being completely on land and going to the water just a little bit, to spending most of its time in the water, to spending all of its time in the water, to going away from the shore and into the deep oceans. They conquered the entire oceans to the point where now the blue whale is the largest animal that ever existed in the history of the world that we know of, including dinosaurs. You tell me, what about any of this is something that Islam says is haram to believe? None of it. Does Islam oblige you to believe it? Absolutely not. There are people who say that, well, your arguments have some genetic irregularities, this problem, that problem, the archaeological, what you call the fossil record is incomplete. That's fine. Those are arguments you can have, but we're allowed to have that discussion. And we have that discussion. There are things already I've said, some Muslim scholars will say, oh, well, it's actually more than that, and some will say it's actually less than that, but we have that discussion. Our deen doesn't stop us from having that discussion. Why? Because ultimately, if your eyes tell you something, your ears tell you something, your mind, your reason shows that this is obviously the truth, and you think that the Quran is telling you something other than that, well, maybe you misunderstood what the Quran is saying. And so, the theory of evolution, the caveat is what? There's only one caveat to the theory of evolution that we say as Muslims we don't accept. Which is what? As a corollary to this idea that, species, can change form and change genetically by, going into different environments and being subjected to different stimuli. What does stimuli mean? It's fancy science nerd talk for like just different conditions, right? Heat is a stimulus because you feel it, right? What to do? I'm talking to you, bro. Heat is a stimulus, right? I'm talking to you, right? Heat is a stimulus. When there's heat, do you feel it? Right? When there's cold, do you feel it? Cold is, that's all it is. So different stimuli will cause species to go into different directions. No problem with any of that. So what happened? People are like, if this is the case for all these other species, then where did human beings come from? Because we're also mammals, right? We also have the same four-chambered heart like a whale has. And so someone's like, oh, well, we must be descended from apes and from monkeys. I want you to think about something for just a moment here. As a scientific theory, I don't think it's all that incredible. It's not something that's completely so off base that a person can say that this is rationally impossible. But we don't accept it as Muslims. Why? For a number of reasons. One is that our Prophet ﷺ explicitly told us that Allah Ta'ala created Adam on his form. Meaning Adam was not part of this process, but he was made on his form. And he was made in a place not in this earth. And he was put down in this earth from a different place. So even though we admit that there are similarities, the Quran has a lot of data also Quran has a lot of material that will suggest also that we're the same as everybody else in some sense. When you bury someone, has anyone been to the graveyard and buried someone before? The sunnah is what? Is that when you're putting the dirt into the grave, you read the ayat of Surah Taha. مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى. That from the earth, the earth that you're putting, in the ground, from it we created you, and into it we'll return you, and from it we'll bring you forth again one more time. Meaning what? You're saying about man being related to monkeys, we say, okay, we're not a descendant of monkeys, but being related to them is not really all that far-fetched. Forget about monkeys. The way DNA works, it's the same for humans and monkeys, it's the same for humans and trees and for viruses and for bacteria and for mushrooms. We have the same nucleotides that make up our genome, we have the same amino acids that make up our proteins. Literally, so much of the machinery is exactly the same. It's like a tree of life, we're part of it. The only thing we say is that we're not descended from them. That I would posit is that the only thing that Islam requires you to say is that we're not descended from them. Rather, Allah Ta'ala made us through a direct intervention. But He made us similar to all of the other living things. There's nothing wrong with saying that. And someone's like, well, why do you say direct intervention? We have complete fossil record that says that shows that we descended from apes. We don't have a complete fossil record about it. Firstly. Secondly, it should be clear to a person that something is different about human beings that's not there in apes. That's not there in any other animal. The brains of not just apes, of a number of species have the capacity to show intelligence like human beings have. To the point where we can teach gorillas sign language, but we can also teach sign language to a dolphin. But they can't teach those things to their offspring, to their children. The ability to sympathize with other people, human speech, the fact that you speak. Why is it that we're the only animals that have this ability to speak through abstraction? My theory is that these are not things that human beings came up with themselves. Rather, these are things that our father Adam alayhi salam saw the angels doing, wearing clothes. Our father Sayyidina Adam saw the angels doing. Isn't it weird to you that there's no environment, there's no habitat in the world? There's no habitat in the world where a human being can survive without clothes. You'll either freeze to death or you'll burn to death. Something will happen, you can't survive without clothes. One of the meanings of bashar, which is the word for a human in the Arabic language, means hairless. Right? All the other non-aquatic mammals, and we're not an aquatic mammal. I know you like swimming, I like swimming too. But all the other non-aquatic mammals, they all have hair. Why? To protect them from the light of the sun, which causes cancer and burn and all this other stuff. Without clothes, we wouldn't make it. Other animals don't wear clothes, the angels wear clothes. 2 cents that I would posit for you to think about is that all of those things that are observable, okay, we can say that's fine. It's very clear that genes are randomly assorted. It's very clear that if some organism receives genes that are not viable in a particular environment, then those genes are not going to be propagated to the next generation. And that cumulatively all of those changes may end up changing an organism significantly. And it's also okay to acknowledge that human beings are similar to all other living things in many ways. But what we say is the argument that somehow or another, like, there was some monkey out there, like, picking up its own feces and eating it, and then, after like 1 million years it turned into a person. I think this argument is very far from an established empirical reality. And we have another theory that has a significant amount of sense that can be made out of it alternatively to it. But these hang-ups that somehow or another Islam is backwards and barbaric because it doesn't accept science, or it doesn't accept logic or reason. This is something that is a backwards imposition of the church on us, because Christians used to be very religious at some point and it held them back. And they found freedom by abandoning their religion. Muslims, we used to be religious and it helped us. And we found slavery through abandoning our religion. Why? Because our religion is different than yours is. And so with that introduction, I wanted this not to be only lecture. Trust me, I can talk for like 7 hours straight. By Musa, it's true, right? Right? But I wanted to say some things, and then I wanted you also then to ask your questions or to have a discussion, because you inevitably have had some discussions about Islam with non-Muslims and have hit some sort of wall or whatever with regards to the different topics that we're going to discuss throughout the day. So I wanted to open up, inshallah, if anyone had any questions about what we talked about or how it relates to objections people have or that you've heard or discussions you had with people, inshallah, we'll open it up for that. Yeah. Tinto. MashaAllah. This is another, MashaAllah, people, this is another gift that Muslims gave the world. That people knew that coffee, when the goats would eat it, it would make them hyper. Like in Ethiopia where the plant grows. But nobody knew how to extract this benefit for human beings. You know who invented coffee like as something that human beings consume? It was not just Muslims, it was a group of Hujjaj, people who were on their way to Hajj. And they experimented with a bunch of different ways, akramakallah, thank you so much, a bunch of different ways to extract this benefit. So they tried weird stuff like baking it into bread and eating it and this and that and the other thing. Finally, they came up with this idea that you have to roast the bean and then you have to, subject it to hot water and then possibly filter that, and then you drink it like that. And what ended up happening is people used it for benefit. The students, Quran students, used it to keep them awake during their hifz lessons, and students of knowledge, during their fiqh lessons, and travelers and workers during their work. And imagine now today, all these airplanes and all of these trains and all of these buildings, and everybody who drinks coffee on the way to work. The doctor who's saving the life of a baby, on the operating table, had a coffee before he came to work, and the reward for all of that is like these hajjis are like getting the reward for all of that, and I think it's like a beautiful thing. Drinking coffee was actually a sign of being a Muslim. That's why everywhere where people drink tea, this is only where you have secularists who are trying to act British. And the reason the British forced tea on people was because they had a monopoly on the tea trade. Otherwise, the Indian subcontinent, they all used to drink coffee from before the British. And in Turkey, for example, anyone had Turkish coffee before? I'm not a big fan, to be honest with you. It's a very rudimentary, unfiltered, but it works. When you need coffee, it works. Traditionally now Turkish coffee has become this like tourist thing, and so they have like these really fancy hotel services of it. But I went to Turkey first time in 2000. All the Turkish coffee shops is all like just laborers would have it on the way to work, and like in the fancy hotels they would serve the tea in those like little frou-frou-y little like weird glasses, and you can't no one's gonna do any work after drinking that. Like, you know, you gotta drink coffee. So alhamdulillah, this is my endorsement, by the way, for coffee. You wanna know about Islam and science? Up to 4 cups a day. The all-cause mortality rate for a person, meaning statistically there's less chance you'll die that day if you drink 1 cup of coffee, and there's even less chance if you drink 2, there's even less chance if you drink 3, there's even less chance if you drink 4. After 4, it's not like it becomes harmful, it's just that the relative benefit starts to like level off a little bit. So this is, mashallah, Islam and science, right there for you. Questions? Go ahead and say what you want. If your question offends me and I like run after you to beat you, someone will probably restrain me before I get to you. So go ahead, this is your shot. I don't make that guarantee in the parking lot though, so ask him now.
What do you think the scientific method was for figuring out how many cups of coffee you actually needed before?
That was a meta-analysis. They aggregated the data from decades of different studies, and they plugged them into like a larger model, and that's what they got.
How about the harm you get from drinking too much caffeine?
Yeah, the harm from drinking too much caffeine is if you want to drink it in the morning. Don't drink it like after maybe 10, 11 a.m. Okay, I just broke that rule, but I also have to lecture for the next 7 hours. So, but yeah, sleep is good for you, and so the half-life of caffeine in the body is something like 7 to 10 hours. So they say that drink it in the morning, don't drink it afterward, because then you're going to harm yourself by not getting sleep, because sleep is good for you. But other than that, I can't think of anything for most people. If somebody has a special condition in which it's harmful, that's a separate problem. But I think for normal, healthy people, I don't think it's going to harm you. Go ahead.
Can Muslims use science to make themselves more successful or stable?
Can Muslims use science to make themselves more successful or stable? Not only can they, you're supposed to. Right? What's the alternative? Is what? Magic? You know what I mean? The world around you have to know about the world around you. And the world around you knowing, if someone asks you, for example, although strictly speaking, this is not what we're talking about right now. I don't know if any of you even attended the Aqidah workshop that we did last year, but when someone asks a Muslim, what's your proof that God exists? What's your proof that God exists? We don't say like the Christians and Jews say, well, you just got to take it on faith. That there's like a white dude in the sky, like that that's gonna like, be like, oh, I like this guy, and so I'm gonna like magically send him things. That's not how our religion works. Rather, we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth. There's nothing like him. Anything you can imagine, this is a proof that this is not Allah. Allah ta'ala is beyond your imagination. But someone's like, well, then how do you prove that something like that even exists if you can't even describe them in words? There are no words to describe the reality of Allah ta'ala. That's why we describe Allah as he described himself in his own book. And we say, even then, you're not supposed to think of a picture inside of your head when you think of him. We say that the proof that Allah exists is what? Is the fact that the creation exists. So imagine this, right? This is a full can of liquid death, dead billionaire, tea lemonade, agave with vitamin B, okay? So what was your name? Hashim, if I told you, hey, look at that, go ahead, look at that big blue beautiful thing, and I just, and this can hit you in the back of the head, square. And you're like, why did you do that, Shaykh? And I'm like, I didn't do it, it just happened itself, right? Who here would believe me if that happened? Who here would believe me? Some people do, but it's because they're dumb, right? Everybody who has like common sense knows that nothing happens on its own. Nothing happens on its own. A can cannot fly like what? 10 feet, 15, 13 feet and hit you on its own. But somehow or another, the entire universe that has many cans in it and has way more feet than just 10, 15, 13, all of it happened on its own. If one thing can't happen on its own, the universe is an aggregate of all these different one things. How is it that if one thing can't happen on its own, everything can happen on its own? That doesn't work that way. Someone's like, I'm not strong enough to lift 1 pound. but I can lift the entire universe. Well, that doesn't work, right? Why? Because the universe has a lot of 1 pounds in it. Like, you have to use scientific notation in order to describe the number. There's no natural language doesn't have a number in order to describe how many pounds there are in the universe. Not that the concept would make any sense anyway at that scale, but the point is that it's a rational proof. It's a rational fallacy. It's not an empirical proof. It's not something you can show someone. See this is God. It's because we don't believe God is a person. We believe Allah is beyond understanding. Why? Because the one who created time and the one who created space is not bound by time and space. So the one who's bound by time and space cannot adequately describe him using empirical means. But the point is that, to your question, because you're like, can we use science to better ourselves? Yeah, you can use science and get a job. But the thing is, there's a goal that it will, and that's fine. It's great. It's wonderful. Do it. Not only make money yourself, but make something that will make money for you and actually make other people's lives better, like coffee, like airplanes, like treatments for different diseases, like all of these things, right? But even greater than that is what? Is that when you look at the sun, you look at the moon, right? Look at all of the things in the Quran that Allah Ta'ala takes an oath by. وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا. Look at the heavens and what made it. وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا. The entire earth and how it's the one that spread it out firm. All of these things, right? وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى. The stars and all of these things that Allah Ta'ala swears an oath by. They're all great things. When you look at the stars and you have some National Geographic understanding of how much energy, how much light, what the nature of the reactions are, and that power, such a bright light that can travel light years, and all of these things. You look at galaxies and galaxy clusters and all of this. Now you tell me, does Donald Trump and Kamala Harris mean all that much to you anymore? Does the price of Bitcoin mean all that much to you anymore? Does $1 billion mean all that much to you anymore? No. You realize how small you are, and you realize how great all of these things are, and even those things that are unimaginably great. I guess we don't have natural language to describe how physically large and intense these things are. And that even those things require a cause. There's no star that just appears out of nowhere. There's something that causes that to happen, and the thing that caused it to happen, there's something that caused that to happen. And there's a beginning to all of it. And the beginning didn't do itself, because nothing does itself. This is the way you see all of these things, you understand scientifically how great these things are, then you know that the one who made them is greater than that. So, it has a lot of benefit in it. This is why the Saturday school and youth groups and things like that, you guys should go on camping trips. You should go far away from New York City and far away from, Jersey City and Newark and all these other things. Go out to a place where, you have beautiful mountains and forests and trees and silence. And remember and realize all this toilet licking challenge on TikTok, these things are all very insignificant. There's a huge universe out there. And the one who created it is even bigger than that. It's very important. It's very important to understand really how deep and complicated and amazing these things are. And that they don't, complicated things don't happen randomly. A mess happens randomly. So, yeah, 100%. I'm a little bit different than my madrasa colleagues, because I did a degree in biochemistry before going to madrasa to learn. People may find this abnormal, but it's not really, in our civilization, it's not abnormal. We live in an abnormal time, is what we should say. Otherwise, we went together, Bhai Imran and myself and Bhai Musa, we went together to Uzbekistan, although on different trips, right? Your group, we didn't go see the observatory of Ulugh-Bek. Your group, we went and saw it, right up on the mountain. That the same madrasa that graduated Mullah Jami, and the same madrasa that graduated Waiz Kashifi, and the same madrasa that graduated Ali Sher Navai, who's the national poet of Uzbekistan, even though he's buried in Herat. We went and visited his grave in Afghanistan afterward. But that same madrasa, they had an observatory in the same time when people are, getting killed and jailed and beaten and excommunicated in Europe for what? For saying that the solar system isn't the center of the universe. Ulugh Bek, his astronomers calculated like the wobble of the sun when it spins on its axis. It required painstaking observation, which is really incredible given that they were all pre-modern tools of observation that they had. And these are all madrasa guys, these are all Maulvis and Maulanas who figured all this stuff out. People who read the Hidayah and read Nahu and Sarf and read, Mantiq and read all of the Aqidah and all of these things, Hadith and Tafsir. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit different than the madrasa, most of my madrasa colleagues nowadays, but that's because we live in a bizarre and dysfunctional time. I want all of you to not waste your youth being idle. You should be stressed out because you have so much to do all the time. Because when you become old physically, you're not going to be able to do it. This is the only time you can do it right now. Constantly be learning something all the time. Constantly be learning something all the time. Constantly be reading things, constantly be writing things, constantly be taking classes, listen to people you agree with, listen to people you don't agree with, listen to people who don't agree with one another. Find the guy who says Hamza's a complete lunatic and go listen to what he has to say and use your own brain and see which one makes sense and which one doesn't. Because the brain, like the other muscles of the body, which you should also be working, you should be working out, brothers and sisters, go for a run, go to the gym. The brain also, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so, all these things, if you find nothing else to do, then memorize the Quran. That's where you should have started from, but in some sense it's also a retreat, that if you can't find any other stimulus, you just look at the page of the Quran and you memorize one line at a time, you memorize one verse at a time, you memorize one word at a time. All of these things, this is the only thing, there's only two things that the Prophet ﷺ ever asked for more from this dunya. One is when he would drink milk, he would say, Allahumma barak lana fihi wa zidna minhu. Oh Allah Ta'ala, put barakah in it for us and increase us in it. One of the things about milk is it's a metaphor of human nature, right? You want to be like as God created you to be happy, which is going to be the topic of our next session. You don't want to be a weird freak. Like if you're a man, it's hard to be a man. Putting on a dress is not going to solve your problems. It's hard. Okay, you want to be a woman, like whatever, getting a surgery where a mastectomy and a hysterectomy, it's not going to solve your problems. Stay within your nature and grow within it. The milk is a metaphor for the nature that God created everybody on. And what's the other thing? The other thing is a commandment of the Quran. وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Allah Ta'ala commanded the Prophet ﷺ, commanded the entire ummah that, oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. The knowledge of the Kitab and Sunnah is like, out of all of knowledge, it's like the head. Without it, all the other knowledge is completely useless. It will just be something that drives you to the hellfire. You completely miss the point. However, once a person has knowledge of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then all of these other branches of learning, they make you a better Muslim, in fact. Not only do they make money for you and all that other stuff, mashallah, but they actually make you a better Muslim. And you will use that knowledge in order to do things, to make things that are helpful for other people, rather than doing things like making an atom bomb or, making chemical weapons or designing AI systems that kill children. Why? Because the knowledge has no head. It just runs around like a headless chicken and causes harm to people. So it's very important to put it in that order. But once that order is observed, then there's nobody who loves ilm more than Muslims. Neither historically nor even today. Questions, comments? You understood the lecture? You understood the lecture? You're the one who said that whales are mammals? Now you're on your phone? Did you understand the lecture? Did you? Now I want you to go and deliver it, inshallah. Go find somebody, find your cousins and your little sister and whatever. I want you to explain it to them, inshallah, wherever you go. All of you, inshallah. Whatever you understood. What you didn't understand, don't make stuff up. But I want you to then share it with them. And then when you see some a professor at university or someone, a science teacher at school who says something silly, then you can check them. You don't have to be rude about it. You can be polite about it, but you check them. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you understand things like the prophetic medicine, like black seed or hijama, in the modern context? Are they still worth pursuing those things, or are they not necessary anymore?
So So the question is, how do we understand prophetic medicine, like using black seed and hijama, which is like cupping, like bloodletting from certain pressure points, or I guess anti-pressure points. There's no reason that they shouldn't be studied and there shouldn't be scientific research on them. Strangely, very bizarrely actually, cupping is almost a universal medical practice from all people and civilizations throughout human history. Probably the only significant exception is modern medicine. And they don't even study it. Like nobody even does scientifically speaking, it's very difficult to say that this is beneficial, it's not beneficial. It's all anecdotal. Someone says, I got cupping done and I feel better. I get cupping done, I feel better. Like me as Hamza, right? But it should be studied. In general, all of the genus of what they refer to as prophetic medicine, all of it, according to a number of muhaddithin and a number of usulis, they say that this is not the Prophet ﷺ's wahi, it's not revelation. Rather, these are the traditional remedies of the Arabs that the Prophet ﷺ knew and that he was telling people for their benefit. And so whether a person does it or doesn't do it, Islam is not contingent on that. But a person will get reward for it if they did it out of love for the Prophet ﷺ. But if it doesn't work, you can do something else. You don't have to keep cupping yourself until you pass out or whatever. Or like if you're allergic to black seed, or like the example our Asatiza said is that, like, for example, honey, right? It's shifa. It's there's a cure for so many things in it. And this is something that even there are scientific studies that will tell you a bunch of different, really amazing benefits of using honey. If you're super diabetic and you're like, oh, look, honey is in the Quran, and you just have a gallon of it in the morning, that's your bad. That's the particular context in which those things are useful. As long as they're useful, feel free to benefit from them. But it's far from consensus that those things are something that your faith is based on. Yeah.
On the same note of honey, I know that there's a recommendation of giving honey to a newborn, right? At least from what I can tell, right? But then modern scientific consensus basically in all caps says don't do that because botulism risks and there's stories and stuff. So something like that, do you kind of just lean on modern the opinion?
So the concept of tahniq, which is the first thing that a baby should eat, is it should be something sweet. Generally, the way that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, and so they would say that here are some sweet things you can use. You can use dates, you can use honey. The actual sunnah is to use dates. If you don't have dates, you can use something else that's sweet. Nowadays, they say that children under the age of 6 months shouldn't have honey because there are certain active organic compounds in it that the baby doesn't have the ability to digest, so they can cause really severe harm. So don't use honey, use the date instead. That's the sunnah anyway. But that being said, still the fuqaha mentioned that you can use honey. The amount of honey that they use for tahniq is what? You literally just smear the lips of the baby so that the baby licks their lips. It's not like you're supposed to be like, all right, son, and get the funnel out and like foie gras, like the thing, like a duck, like force feed it or whatever, right? But that sunnah is best done using dates anyway. You just kind of half chew the dates and smear the baby's lips, and then the baby kind of, it's really cute, because the baby, it's not cute when I do it. It's kind of weird, but when a baby does, it's really sweet, mashallah. That's, questions, comments? So inshallah, we have, how long do we have till Salat? Salat's at 1:30? Or 1:15?
1:20-ish.
Okay. So why don't we go ahead and we'll break now. Whoever's not coming back, jazakumullah khairan for listening with generally attentiveness, mashallah. And if you want to stay for the rest of it, you're more than welcome to. Barakallahu feekum.
So the next session is going to start at 2 p.m. That's the feminism. Feminism one. So
I'm gonna get
inshallah,
stoned.
we will stick around.